Dun, dun, da, 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 da. That's a delicious beverage.
Is there anything better than a morning coffee? Anything?
No.
Right? Is there? Locke? Is there
No.
anything better than a morning coffee? Like that first coffee in the morning? This is the best coffee I've ever had every single day.
And I do the coffee at home now too, right?
Yeah.
Because well, I'm not
fired.
working. So I am enjoying my morning Java. Yes,
Yeah, you don't have to line up anywhere for it.
Yes,
slow your day down.
No drive-throughs.
How great is your life right now?
How great is your life? Honest to God. Opening five. How great is your life?
It's good.
What time did you get up today? What time did you wake up?
I'm gonna try to get up.
No, that's not what I'm asking. Let's stay to the question.
I got up at 6:30 this morning.
What time did you normally get up? 2 weeks ago, what time were you waking up?
4.
There you go. 2 extra hours, 2.5 extra hours. Quality of life's instantly better already.
And I went for a walk with the dog. With the sun coming up.
Beautiful day. What a beautiful day.
I get to talk to you.
Yeah. And
that's great.
And you get to talk to an old friend who used to talk to on the radio quite a bit. And he's one of Canada's most preeminent producers of documentaries, films, legendary in the industry. If you smoke cannabis in this country, if you've frequented a cannabis shop in this country in the past 3, 4, 5 years, you have one man and his creative license and freedom to thank. Please welcome documentarian, dangerous looking son of a gun, Mr. Adam Scorgie from Scorgie Productions, to the program again today.
That's quite the introduction, gentlemen. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. But it's true. Like we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff today.
What people don't know is the union. Your documentary about cannabis was used to open up cannabis sales laws, understanding in this country. We should be worshiping you much more than we do. Legit. Like there should be an Adam Scorgie Day in this country for cannabis users that are able to sleep and make their way through life because of people like you.
There it is. October 17th. Scorgie Day.
Just stand up for that plant. And 12 years ago, produce a life-changing documentary and hand it to the people in Canadian government. Say, hey, everybody, watch this, and you'll allow pot smoking in this country. And that is what they did. Can we just for 1 second, Lachlan? I know you're more of a pot guy now, as your wife is. Yeah. I just want to, for 1 second, give Adam his due on this show. Because if it was not for him.
Well, legit though, your documentary was sent to many of the members of the House of Commons in order as a teaching aid about the potential legalization of marijuana, right?
Correct. It actually went further than that. And this is kind of where we're getting into before we went on air about the algorithms and analytics on social media. Actually, the union became such a cult classic and was just spiraling on chat rooms and the internet and social media back before algorithms and the marketing really hoodwinked everything. And Parliament Hill received thousands and thousands of emails and letters referencing facts and statistics and stuff from the union that finally the Liberals were like, hey, we should invite this guy to Parliament Hill and have a bipartisan screening of the film. When I first got the email from Senator Joyce Murray, I thought it was like a trap or something. I'm like, what? No.
You thought you were getting honeypotted?
Yeah. I thought
you're going to show up. I was like, show up to parliamentary hearing at a Motel 6 where someone.
Yeah, you have to get just hoodwinked and ripped apart. I was like, what? You guys want me to come to Parliament Hill to screen my movie? Are you kidding me? So I wrote and saw that it was like, the legit signature on the email and everything. And I was like, wow, really? And I remember, I think I told you this story, but my director, because we went together, and he was like, Adam, if the screening doesn't go good and we really start getting berated, sorry, but I'm going to just say I'm the camera guy documenting this, and you're going to take the brunt.
You're on your own.
And I was like, that's fine. I got thicker skin. I'll deal with that. That's kind of what a producer does, is put out fires when they come. But no, it was interesting to see. We had conservatives and NDP. We had different members of parliament there. And I remember as we're making fun of politicians and the games they play, they were all laughing and poking. They're like, yeah, we totally do that shit, right? They were like,
what?
Like when I went there, I had such a different opinion of what Parliament and politics was like. We had the best tour. We had this young guy.
When you went there, hang on, before you get into the story, your preconceived notion about what Parliament and the business of politics in Ottawa was, did you expect normal, serious people? And when you got there, did you go, what a bunch of fucking losers? Like, this is crazy.
Combination of both. When I first went there, I totally was like, oh my God, like that feeling of fraud syndrome. I'm like, what am I doing here? I was like, I made a documentary. I inherited a strip club when I was younger from my dad. Like, why am I getting invited here? There should be alarms going off. I kept thinking when I was going to get security or something, they're going to be like, don't let this fucking guy in here, right? Like, but then no, everyone was excited to meet me and shaking my hands and taking photos. And I was like, hey, this is really weird. I was like, I kept waiting for it to be like a trap or something, like where they were going to just bombard me. But you know, let's call a spade a spade. The Liberals, I don't think they were trying to do the greatest thing for Canada. They were looking for a way to connect with the youth, right? And they saw with thousands of emails and messages, they're like, holy shit, this is something Canadians care about, and this could possibly win us the election. And I do think that's one of the biggest things of why the youth came out to vote for the Liberals, right, is the potential legalization bill. So when we went there, you know, and then you're in this beautiful building, you're getting the tour, and we're going to screen. And I'm like, I keep waiting, like, man, is security going to come or something? Are we going to get yelled at? And then when I realized how, like, the first time you go into the caucus and you see them all arguing with each other is when you realize, caucus. Yeah, it's like how ridiculous this is. And our host told us that, like, it's like kindergarten where they're like, and we as the Conservatives, here, 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 and they all pat each other on the back and chant and bang like this. Yeah, and then the next person stands up and they totally don't answer anything of the questions that they said. They just throw another form of spin, and then they all cheer for each other and clap. And I remember being like, wow, this is really juvenile. And then our host leans over and he goes, can you believe this is what runs the country? Pretty ridiculous, right? And I was like,
oh my God.
It was totally, like, it was exactly what I was thinking, right? But I didn't want to say it because we were guests, and I was like, I kept feeling like I was a fraud there and I shouldn't be there in the first place. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, but then he walked us through and gave us the whole lay down, right? And he talked about, then he's like, watch this, watch how good. He showed us one, I can't remember who it was, but one senator, and he said, watch how good he is, where he got hit with a really hard question and he just totally deflected it right away and then got everybody arguing about something else. And the young guy that gave us a tour is like, he's like, see, he's like, I know that's annoying, but he's like, that's actually super clever at how you can get a really hard question that can make your party look horrible, and you can totally deflect and get everybody arguing about something else. That is what key to great politicians do, is they deflect the great arguments and they get you to focus on something else.
Do you see any Coke residue in any of the public bathrooms?
I didn't quite get the private tour, right? I just got the general tour in the front, so I didn't see that. Yeah. But I do remember this.
You didn't lick any back of the toilet seats?
No, I didn't.
You didn't see any caucus members come out doing some of this? Time for question period.
Are you insinuating that our members of parliament might use drugs?
Yeah, I am. I'm insinuating that members of parliament, a lot of them are coked up 100%.
Well, that was so. It's funny because we talked about. There's a clip in our film, The Union, where we talk about how members of parliament would have a tough on drug policy, yet they would get caught for the very same thing and not serve a lick in jail and get a slap on the wrist. And when those things were coming on, I remember our director and I were like, oh shit, I wonder how and they were smiling at the tables and like this, being like, yeah, totally. Like one rule for everybody else and one rule for us, right?
You are not making my opinion of politicians. You're not easing it, making it better here, Scorgie.
Dude, Scorgie knows what I know that I've been trying to tell you for the past 2 years. It's all
that there's
theater.
Some hypocrisy.
It's generational elites that want to make you pay them for the privilege of living in this country. And to Adam's point, is a joke, right? Like, we just want, dude, we watch it in real time. We're watching it in real time. We're watching the elites and politics destroy everything from media to digital media to, dude, you got fired this week because of it. You know, Scorgie's business is harder to navigate because of it, right? Like, I mean, the digital business that we use is harder to navigate because of this.
It was so nice back in the day when you could organically, like, you know, use social media to actually connect with your audience. But now if you're not paying, it's like it just crushes the algorithms. And it's so hard to hit with an audience now. Like, it really, I was telling a story to you guys before we started recording, but we're working with Dane Cook now, right? And Dane Cook at one point was the biggest comedian in the world because he was one of the first to utilize MySpace. For those that are, you guys have all heard of it, but younger generations like, what? There's a social media. MySpace was the first. And had they made it easy to use like Facebook, Facebook wouldn't have existed. They had a majority of the worldwide marketplace. And Dane was the first one that realized, like, or one of the first people that was like, man, I can actually directly connect with my audience. I can sell out shows without having to go in 3 or 4 days and do all this radio and TV. And he would take hours on the weekends responding to every person to try to make it personal. And that's why no one knew he blew up. They're like, how the fuck is this guy breaking all these records and connecting with so many people? And even other comedians got mad. They're like, you didn't go slang at schools and universities and do the hard roads for years. Like, you don't deserve this, because he was adapting with the times. But now he's like, man, it's so frustrating because my audience hasn't translated now with the new algorithms. He's like, now I post things, and if I don't pay for it, he's like, it totally gets stifled.
Yeah.
And as he's saying this, I remember it was like, it reminded, what's the word? Like, you go back that, that I was reminiscing when I was like, fuck, that's what we had for the union. Like, you would make one post or one discussion and get thousands of interactions of people getting in there. And now it's like, we still have the union page. It's got like 700,000, and you'll post and you get 3 likes or something. Like, no one interacts with it. Whereas we used to post a photo, like, or a meme when they first got popular and get hundreds of thousands of interactions, comments, likes, shares. It's sad to see now, but like, social media really feels like it's hard to market on now. It's so saturated.
Yeah, because the algorithm doesn't reward you on social media or any of those platforms now, because they've been ginning us up, kind of getting us used to using it over the past and needing it over the past 20 years. And now everybody that owns one of these hosting platforms, whether it be YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, the algorithm recognizes one thing first. Did you pay us for this?
Yeah.
Did you pay us for this? So it doesn't matter about how good or the merit of your creativity to some extent, right? Doesn't matter who you are or what you do. If you're not paying the algorithm to that point, you're not successful, which is another reason why traditional media is taking it in the mouth, because radio's free, to Lachlan's point, right? Everybody's like, I'm not being rewarded by listening to that radio show. It doesn't give me that hit of dopamine of a like, or it doesn't give me that excitement. It's just there. It's just this white noise. And it's almost the same with television. And I'd be interested to find out about that business model for your industry as well, right? Like, how has the algorithm shifted profitability or revenue in your business? Because that's all about eyeballs too, and generating buzz, is it not?
It's super tough. It's like, you're always trying to, like, we've got Breaking Olympia coming out right now with Phil Heath, who is an interesting, one of the first bodybuilders, the greatest of our generation, 7 in a row. He beat Arnold's record, right? Only Lee Haney and Ronnie Coleman have more Mr. Olympia titles than Phil. And he was the first.
This guy is so jacked. It's like, it looks painful. Phil Heath is that jacked.
When his biceps were at their peak, they were 28 inches. Like, that used to be my waist when I was in my 20s. So yeah,
I like that. We'll focus on the used to.
Yeah, well, definitely used to.
Used to be.
I'm not even close to that now, unfortunately.
So was mine when I was 13.
What are you now? Let's take a quick aside. Let's waist check. What are you now, Scorgie? What do you got?
I am a 34 now.
Lock?
I wear a 36 pant because 34, let's just say, the boys don't have a lot of room
with an
to move.
Excuse. 36. Oh, okay. There you go. Scorgie, right? You like that? No. He has to get bigger pants for his waist because his package is so impressive.
I'm a little older. I'm more for comfort than speed. So I'm going to buy a 36.
You're right. No,
and then cinch up the belt a bit.
Scorgie's a 34. Hey, guys, breaking news. 33 over here. Stick it. Okay?
Oh, come on.
I was 42 for a long time, 42-inch waist. Anyway, don't worry about it. That was 300
I miss Fat Dean.
Fat Dean was a bit of a weapon. Yeah.
Good. Man, that's good. Well, I keep telling myself, I keep hanging on to some of my 32 jeans that I'm going to get back there. And then I do for like maybe a week, and then I lose it. Dude,
send them to me. I've got a great ass now too. So send those to me.
I got a stack of jeans. I got a stack of 34s. 2.
120 squats a day. I've got a nice little old man bubble ass now. You'll like it. It's really nice. Yeah. Anyway, back to Phil Heath.
He's got a younger girlfriend. Why is Dean working out?
Yeah. I got to stay young for myself or something. Anyway, but my point is this: is that this has been like I've heard about this. Like your movies, all your movies come with buzz, right?
Yeah.
And to your point, this is you notice it because it's your industry. Increasingly hard to break through unless you're paying for that breakthrough. Correct?
Yeah, so it's funny because we noticed it with Bisbing. The only thing that broke through organically is when we had Dana White retweet and share things. And then actually our guy showed us, he's like, those actually broke through just because he had such a big following and it was such a targeted following, talking about Bisbing, Dana White. It's all within like MMA fans. And now with Phil Heath, like he's got millions of followers and he shares things and it's hard for it. It's still getting lots of interactions and like Universal, it's being released with Universal Pictures again. So they're really happy, but I'm looking at like the numbers we used to get for views and stuff. And even though now they're being shared from much bigger platforms, like Phil Heath's Instagram is 4.2 million. We would share things back in the day just on ours and we'd get almost as many views as now his with 4.2 million followers, because if you're not paying for it, they just crunch it right down. So it sucks. And then you're competing now too, where like, you know, Universal's model is still getting people to rent and purchase for transactional, right? Against streaming, where a lot of people are like, what? Like they don't even know what a movie is if it's not on a free streaming platform, right? They're like, what do you mean it's still transactional? Like I have to like rent it and buy it. So it's a battle. Although the streamers are losing a little bit because they're, you know, Netflix is going so much by the algorithms now that some of the content I feel is like really slipping, because it literally, you pitch them an idea and they like run it through their algorithm and they're like, not too niche, not for us, or doesn't fit.
Oh, it's all AI. Even the pitch process is AI, where they'll say, okay, give us the pitch process. We'll run it through this formula and we'll tell you whether or not we're going to carry it, because it'll tell us whether or not we can make money on it, because that'll tell us whether or not there's enough content here or there's enough activity here that we can actually use it algorithmically.
Or hit whatever ones they want, whatever demographic they want to hit.
Crazy.
So it's like, so you see a lot of people saying, man, like there's so much stuff on Netflix, but I'm having a tough time finding anything I like. Right. So it's a tough, and now you're seeing other platforms like Paramount, and some of them are starting to come out with stuff that people are like, man, I've been really liking the shows on Paramount.
But I think it's also a lot of it is the competition though, Scorgie too, right?
Yeah,
like Netflix was the only game in town for a long time. Now everybody is sort of taking that model and they've tried to duplicate it. So you've segmented the not just the audience, but the content that's available
and it's kind of like that reciprocal. It starts happening over again, because it's kind of like, you know, everybody left broadcast or was leaving TV because you're like, I don't want to have to get this package to get all my shows, right? And you're like, oh, I can just get a subscription to Netflix, get all these shows. But now you're having to get a subscription to Hulu and having to get a subscription to Paramount, having to get a subscription to Disney, right? And then those shows are exclusive to that. So then you're having to bundle those. So it's kind of going back to where it was, but yeah, it's a challenge, and you're seeing now more than ever. The thing I'm looking is like, there's so many great shows, and I'm like, man, if this were to release 10 years ago, this is the only show people would be talking about. But now there's hundreds of great shows, so it's like, it's hard for those to break. Even there's certain shows I watch and I'm like, holy cow, this show's fucking amazing. How do I have not heard anybody talk about
it? You almost got to dig for them. Like I watch, obviously it's much ballyhooed. Lachlan and I were talking about it. I watched The Gentleman this weekend and it was number one on my ranking, right? Like when it's like, these are the number one movies. And so I logged on to my son's profile and it was like a totally different set of rankings, like the things that he would watch, right?
Love Island.
Love Island.
Yeah.
Also, Love on the Spectrum. Have you guys watched any of that? You watched Love on the Spectrum?
No, I'm not. We're not.
Yeah. Okay, I got a question. No, you have to watch that documentary. Scorgie, before we pivot to your documentary, Breaking Olympia, the Phil Heath story, because I want to talk about the doc, I want to talk about the man. You have to. I need your professional opinion on something. Love on the Spectrum. Is it a mockery?
Obsessed with this show, Adam.
I can't stop watching it. I've watched every episode. There's a whole bunch of episodes.
I haven't watched it yet. I just saw the trailer, but I saw and I saw some of the interviews, and I was like, it did capture. I was like, wow, that's kind of interesting, and seeing how they would take that approach. So
Yeah.
Dean thinks they're making fun of him.
100%. Like, dude, you know, when you film a documentary, someone says something stupid and you like, you sit on that for like an extra 2 seconds on the shot, right?
Yeah.
Like you know the tricks, right? You know the tricks. So there's a, like, and it's in every episode. There's a couple of moments like this where it's like, this is Mark. He likes mowing the lawn and standing next to a straight wall. And then they see Mark literally walking for a second confused, right?
Yeah.
And I burst out laughing and I'm like, this is mockery. Like, how are they not? How are they?
See,
There's got to be some of that in there, right? Like a little
Dean's trying to do.
nod to mockery.
You always have Dean. This is the thing that I always tell people is people always try to say, you know, you're
This is Jimmy.
or
He enjoys sunny days, going to the zoo and living in car washes. I mean, like, seriously.
Okay, Adam, what he's trying to do is he's trying to get you.
This is Alice.
To feel
She
better
likes
about
going
himself
to the beach and
because
counting
he's
green
finding
M&Ms
this show funny
all day long.
Right? He's finding this show funny, and he just wants you to say, yeah, they are making fun of him, so that he feels
feel like
better
an
about
asshole.
himself.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know because I haven't actually seen the show, but I can tell you this is that
This is just Dean being needy.
Yeah.
Those moments where you hang on things and you do that is what everybody talks about. Like, even if you try to take the most unbiased approach or ethical approach in storytelling, those choices of hanging on moments and doing things are you taking a side, right? That is how, because some people would say that's too long. You should move on and make it quick and it shouldn't be funny. Some people should say you should do this. So, but I'm sure, knowing kind of in today's world of sensitivity, I'm sure when they pitched it, it wasn't like, we are going to make fun of this situation or these people, right? It was probably an ethical side.
I will say this, Jimmy loving car washes, I think is funny as well.
Yeah.
Do you feel better, Dean?
Yeah.
This is Tom.
Yeah.
He likes playing Call of Duty and collecting toothpicks from around the world. And then you get this slow shot on Tom going, I like toothpicks. And you're like, how can I not laugh at that? Am I an asshole? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is you make me an asshole.
All right. We've established over time that you
I'm
are an asshole.
Yeah,
let's
totally
talk
am.
about the doc. The new
the doc, Phil Heath. Again, back to him, Mr. Olympia, breaking Olympia. You've got this thing with like athletes that do like the craziest endurance, physical, beat the shit out of each other, beat the shit out of yourself stories, whether it's the Trejo story, whether it's Bisping. But what attracted you to the Phil Heath story? Let's get to that first of all, and then we'll get to the doc. And there's a screening in Edmonton I want to get to, and some tickets, and we'll get to some of the details. But why Phil Heath?
So it's interesting. A couple reasons is that some really fun. I was actually texting my dad's old girlfriend. My dad used to collect the magazines in the heyday of like bodybuilding, which is probably in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, like when Flex magazine and Muscle and Fitness were all super popular. You know, you would look at these magazines, and even Phil says it like in the trailer, like, what is that muscle? How does he get that? These guys look like, you know, superheroes that you've never seen. Like, they look like the Incredible Hulk in real life. So my dad and me used to look at those as kids, and I used to look through these magazines, and you'd look at these like larger than life individuals. So it was actually Phil and his team reached out to us. They're from Colorado, and when we did Ice Guardians, they were friends with the Parker family, Scott Parker and stuff that was in my film Ice Guardians. They were like, hey, you should really do a film with Adam. Like, he puts a lot of passion and care into his stories. And so then I met Phil, and at first I was super busy and we didn't get a lot of time. And I was like, hey, you know, if you guys got to meet with other people, totally understand. But they're no, we really want you to tell the story. And at the time, Phil had won his 7th, and then he was going to try to go for his 8th, and then possibly 9th to be the all-time Mr. Olympia. But then that's when the injuries started happening. He had that really bad hernia, which he had like, you know, a quarter of his small intestine hanging out in the one tournament that he won. And so we went through that. And then it, like, once meeting him and seeing his goals and what he wanted to do, and I went to Mara, I was like, man, I think there's a really cool story there. And kind of that nostalgia of me and my dad, like going through all these magazines and seeing all these great competitors that we were going to get to interview. I was like, man, I really want to tell this story. And then we were supposed to follow Phil. And this film has taken a long time because originally we were supposed to be like, I think we started the concept in like 2018, got financing in 2019. And we were supposed to start filming right away for him to go catch these Olympias. But then COVID hit, right? And then it was like the Olympia got pushed, and then the Olympia got pushed again, and then it got moved from Vegas to Florida. And then we had to deal with all the travel logistics back then of where like you had to quarantine. Were you allowed to travel? The Canadian government delicately made it seem like you weren't allowed to travel, although you were. All these different things to go through. So me and Phil have been kind of reminiscing on that. I was like, man, it is hard enough to make a doc. What we had to go through with the global policies and pandemic at the same time made it like damn near impossible. So when
must make you feel really good about it too, like 4 years after the fact, where you're like, oh, we didn't need half of this stuff, and we probably could have just kept working.
Yeah, I know. Well, see, it was interesting because we did a lot of traveling. We were filming for Dolph at the same time too. So that's where, you know, you get locked in your bubble, and going back to social media, you kind of saw where you were hoodwinked by what you were being told in your area. Because I remember we had to travel. The Olympia was happening in Florida, right, where everything was wide open. And in Canada at the time, schools were locked down. If you remember, outdoor playgrounds had caution tape and shit on them. Like you weren't allowed to go outdoor. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. We couldn't, we had like, at the time we had 5 kids. My ex, everybody's in a playground across the street. It was like this outlet for everybody. Yeah. And I remember when they came around and they were like putting caution tape and signs out, don't touch this because you could die. And you're like, you got to be
kidding. It was ridiculous. So then we go to Florida, right? And everything's wide open there, right? We filmed the Olympia. There's 6,000 people, and Floridians, barely any of them believed in the masks and bullshit. We're all wearing N95s because we're Canadian and we're indoctrinated, and we're all like, oh my God, we're like, can't get COVID, and we're following. Plus, like, we wanted to be respectful of the Olympia, and we were working with the Rocks company, $7 Productions, and they're like, Adam, make sure everybody, we had to get COVID certified and take these courses and do all this stuff to make sure that, you know, everybody's name and brands were respected, that there wouldn't be any kind of lawsuits or liabilities. Like, it was so much extra work and costs we had to go through to do this. But we're all wearing, my whole team is wearing M95s, and you're in a room of 6,000 people, and there's like,
did you feel like a nerd? You feel like one of those Canadian nerds? You're like, do people mock you down there the whole time? It's like, you fucking Canadian nerds.
They were, well, because we were working and had cameras, we didn't get mocked. I think a lot of staff, a lot of them were doing it because like facilities would make you do it. Like, but everybody was lifting, and we were traveling. And then when you really saw it, to me, and this is just when my brain was going, there's so many similarities to like the union and the culture high of like drug war policies that like, oh no, we're locking down and doing all these safeties for your protection. Mm-hmm. Give over your rights, give over all your stuff. We, the government, are going to protect you. And it kept just red flagging. I'm like, dude, when has the government ever taken this much care and really given a fuck? I was like, but at the time, anytime you said anything that contradicted the narrative, you were fucking crazy, right?
Canceled. Yeah. Canceled.
So I just wanted to get the job done and go through, but we'd have these discussions. But when we were traveling in the States, you would see, I remember that's when we all had a laugh. It's like you would see state by state how political it was. Because if you were in a blue state, completely locked down, like, you know, you had to get new COVID tests to come from one state to another just to go in, even though you just had one coming into the country. You had to get another one, right? And then, of course, they were 150 to 225 US a pop for each one of my team members. Even though you were vaccinated and you had a vaccine passport, you still had to go get that.
Yeah.
You had to get all this. And then you would go to a red state and it'd be wide open, right? And then I was like, okay, but then like the hospitals must be slammed, right? So we went to visit my parents in Texas, where again, nothing really shut down there. They did 2 weeks. They actually did 2 weeks and then moved on. Whereas we did 2 weeks to flatten the curve, which came to 2.5 years later. We finally released things, but Texas actually did 2 weeks. And like my parents, my mom had just battled a stint of cancer, and she went to the hospital. I'm like, Dad, were the hospitals like overrun? You guys are wide open. Like they must be. And he's like, Adam, it was like a zombie apocalypse. Nobody was fucking in there, other than other cancer patients that were going for treatment, right? There was nobody. And this was, you just kept going like, what the fuck is going on then? That's just so weird. And then this was the ringer for us as we went to Vegas, right? Which I kind of call a purple state, right? Because it's kind of in the middle, kind of flops.
It's fairly lawless there. So whatever you like.
But it was
might be blue, but that's where the blue go to.
That's why I say purple, right? It's kind of purple, red, and it's kind of. So they were 50% open. 50. The casinos were allowed 50% capacity. The restaurants were allowed 50% capacity because the two sides could come to an agreement. They're like, okay, we can't be fully open, like the red states, and we can't be fully closed like the blue states. We're going to be 50% open. And that's when I was like, that's fucking ridiculous, right? Like you guys came to some agreement. We'll be, so the casinos would be wide open. You could gamble, but they wouldn't have
could
the
just smoke in the casinos.
Oh, yeah, you could smoke. Right? You could smoke and you could smoke, gamble, drink, but the buffets weren't open and the nightclubs weren't open. Right, like it was. That's when all of us were like, it was a joke.
That's
and then,
the biggest problem with this whole conversation is that I think there's so many conversations like this about what happened and how it was handled, and it was bungled on a lot of levels. I go back to like you reminded me of a conversation I had with a friend of mine, because you're right. Like we were sort of in our own little bubbles about how this thing was being handled, and it was being handled differently around the world. And we didn't know that. And a friend of mine was like right in the middle of it. Like literally they wouldn't let anybody go to work except for the on-air show. So we literally went into work by ourselves. Everything else was locked down. And I just assumed
by the way,
everybody
we
around
talk,
the world
hang
was
on,
doing.
but we talk about it like that was a bad thing. Guaranteed.
I didn't mind it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I know people really struggled during COVID. I actually flourished. But I talked to a friend of mine who lived in Edmonton, and because I saw a post he put up, and he's like, off to Texas. And I'm like, how are you getting to Texas? And he's like, I've been traveling the whole time. He's a barbecue guy. And I'm like, this is just bizarre. You're so right, Adam, that there was that disconnect between what everybody was doing and what you thought you should and shouldn't do. Yeah, it makes it interesting.
That's where I was really disappointed in it, like because the way the government handled things, they really made it seem like it was illegal to travel, but it wasn't. Right, you could go to the airport and you could travel, and it was funny because I actually my office that we rent spaces in a law firm, and I have a family friend that's a lawyer, so I would go through a lot of this. I'm like, what is the actual law? He's like, you can travel. He's like, and I was like, well, I don't want to do this stupid quarantine thing when I get back. Like, I got to get back to work, and I got my kids. And he's like, no. He's like, it's a mandate. They can't enforce a mandate. They'll try to intimidate you, and they'll try to do all this stuff, but that you can't. That's not a law. A mandate is not a law. It's like a firm suggestion. So we were like, okay, so we'd get these essential worker forms, which are bullshit anyway, right? So that we didn't have to quarantine for 14 days after we came back.
How much were those?
They weren't that much because my buddy's a friend. So if you had to spend an actual lawyer, probably $3 or $4 grand, but he drafted them for like free, and then we would just change them. And most of the time we got through, but a couple of times it was funny because our sound guy, I don't know, Locke, because we always make the sound guys always like waiting on sound. Where the fuck sound? Like sound gets no love because in a movie, your sound is just supposed to be perfect. The only time you notice sound is when it's not good. You're like, fuck, I can't really hear that, or that didn't sound right, or it's too loud, right? They get no love. So then we're coming back and we're always chirping sound. Our boy, Kerry, great guy, Kerry Opper. And then we're coming through customs. And this is when Canadian customs were super strict, and they were like going through. And the guy goes, really, he goes to our sound guy, goes, but is sound really essential? Like, are you really an essential worker? And we never let him hear the end of it, right? He was like, and I was like, Carrie, see, I was like, that's where you're too nice. You should have fucking said to that guy, yeah, how many silent movies have you watched in the last fucking year? Right? Like, but he just didn't say he was scared to not. But a few times I pushed because I got sick of it. Like, dude, we got the passports. I got vaccinated. I did everything they asked for. We spent thousands on tests. And then they're still like, oh no, you have to quarantine. And I'd be like, no, I respectfully decline. And then you'd see it would be like a college kid that's hired from Health Canada to be this.
Now what do I do?
So and they'd be like, well, no, you have to. I'm like, no, I don't have to. I can respectfully withdraw. It's right in my passport, in my charter rights. I do not have to. And they'd be like, oh, they're like, well, I'm gonna have to get my manager. I'm like, go get your manager. And then this is the kind of deception they would do is then they'd have you walk by the RCMP, right? To try to like intimidate you, like, oh, well, you're gonna have to come through here. And I was like, and my lawyer informed me, and he said, yep. He's like, Adam, as long as you do not start, yelling at them and berating them, because then they can get you for disturbing the peace, right? Then the RCMP can get in and say, hey, you're being aggressive in a violent place, we're gonna get you. But as long as you were, respectful and said, no, I am not going to go to some random facility that's got hundreds of potentially infected people, spend an arm and a leg to go do so with makeshift security that's been hired and plastic put on the walls. I will go to my house where it is much more secure, and I will serve my quarantine there. And they really didn't know. They'd be like, oh, well, and then they get a manager and they'd say the same thing. I'm like, nope, I respectfully decline. I'm going to go here. And if you're not going to detain me for doing anything illegal, I'm going to walk by you now. And then they'd eventually just be like, okay, they're like, well, you could get a fine. I'm like, and I would hit them. And the last few times this happened, I got really mad at them. I said, do you like lying to Canadian citizens? I was like, because in Canada, in Alberta, there was only one fine. And it even got thrown out recently, was that one pastor that kept disputing the laws and kept having, he kept holding court in his church. He was the only guy. Nobody else got served a fine. So I said, no, I know, I work in a law firm. None of those have gone through. So I was like, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to get a fine. I'm going to go home and I'm going to do my quarantining. I'm going to test negative and I'm going to go back to work. And they're like, well, this could happen. And I was like, no, it won't. So I was like, you can stop lying and I'm going to go home. The last time it happened is I got into it with the police. So we were coming back from Nashville, and this is near the end. This is like 2 years in, when people are traveling. Some places are open, some provinces aren't. Like, the laws are a mess at this point, but businesses were making money off of testing and stuff. So we're coming back from Nashville to Toronto, Toronto to Edmonton. It's just a connector. And I get a sticker put on my passport, and they're like, oh, you've been randomly selected. You have to do another test. And I said, no, I decline. And they're like, no, you have to. I'm like, no, I don't have to, because if it's random, then I don't have to. If it's mandatory, then everybody would have to do it. So I decline. And I go to walk out, and the guy like freaks out, and he gets 2 police officers to come over. And they're like, hey, why don't you want to do the test? I'm like, because I'm done playing these games. I'm fully vaccinated. Here's my passport. I just took a $250 US test to get back into Canada. It's right here. It was less than 24 hours ago. I was like, and there's no point in doing this test, because I'm still going to get on my flight, which is going to be in 2 hours. And you're not even going to give me the results until I get back to Edmonton. So it is completely useless. This is some business deal that the Toronto airport has signed with some company to make profit. I'm not doing it. I'm not playing this game anymore. And then the police officer goes, well, you won't be able to get on your flight. And I said to her, I'm like, when you swore an oath to protect and serve Canadian citizens, did you swear an oath to lie to them? Because I'm like, that's not true. My bag is already checked in. I can see it. I have an air tag on it. I was like, and I'm already got my boarding passes. I'm getting on my flight. You can walk me to my gate. I'll show you. Right. And then she was like, well, you could get a fine. And I'd already been through that. I'm like, that is a lie as well. I'm not going to get a fine. Nobody in the province of Alberta has received the fine. And I beg that no one in Ontario has either. So it's like, so if they were 2 female officers. So I'm like, respectfully, officers, if you guys are both done lying, I'm going to walk by you now, because they were all they didn't have anybody say no.
Were they postulating? Were they kind of standing there?
They had their hand on their pepper spray and shit. Like, they were going to douse me. Right. And I was like,
so you had followed every rule to get back into the country, to travel in the country, tested, vaccinated, all that stuff. And they're still like,
and I just said, I said, I'm done playing these games. So if you're done lying, I'm going to walk past. I said, either you are going to detain me for breaking the law, which I have not done, or I'm going to walk past you now. Because I wanted to make that clear with them being females, right? That they didn't want to feel that I was being aggressive.
Yeah.
And you saw they were like, and then they just went like this, and they just said, go ahead. And then it was funny. There's 10 other people that were asked, and they're like, well, we're not doing this stupid test either then. And they all started we're all
See, that's the problem. Everybody is sort of on board with compliance, right? Yeah. And a lot of what they were trying to do was just sort of give everybody the sense that if we're going to be okay if everybody follows along, right? So, yeah.
Which it's funny in a time of stress I get, but hindsight being what it is, and we look back on the last 4 or 5 years, and I was a real stickler for let's all get vaccinated real quick and let's just be done with it. Like the 2 weeks to flatten the curve business, remember that? Which you said, it rightly pointed out, lasted 2.5 years. I was into 2 weeks.
Yeah.
No big deal. Yeah, I'll help out. I'll do my civic duty. I'll go through the couple of hoops. But I find it interesting that you're reliving these stories and you're telling us the real life application when everybody was at home going, no big deal. I mean, you went through it. It is a big deal. It was a big deal. And there were a bunch of different interests that are a big deal. So unless you're willing, you can have an opinion on whether or not we've just been through government overreach. You can have an opinion on whether or not, our rights were removed from us unjustly. You can have opinion. And I've got opinions on civic responsibility and rights as well. Yeah. But those opinions don't come with the experience of dozens of flights and interactions that you had, right? So it's really
and how many people just didn't do it because they didn't want to go through the hassle of doing it, right? That was probably the majority of the businesses that sort of rely on travel at that time, right? So you were testing the boundaries because
man, I learned so much from this one. This is where you could see, and I think why probably now just worldwide, like
see, this is the thing, you're not pissed about it. You've learned a lot about it, right?
I've learned to like this is where I think the distrust in government and legacy media like is coming from low, because like you just saw how so many countries overstepped and abused this. They used this as a control tool. They had business opportunities that were jumping in, because I can tell you another thing that's hokey. So when we were traveling, because we were also filming for Dolph Lundgren's doc, we went to a lot of different countries. We actually, in that time period when nobody was traveling, we went to like 7 different countries. We went to Spain, Sweden, the UK, United States, Canada, and every country had different rules. And it even came down to, this is where you saw how political it was looking back. Certain vaccines that were made in certain countries were given the thumbs up. Ones made in other countries that countries didn't have good trade embargoes with were not accepted, right? They'd be like, no. If you have that vaccine, doesn't work, right? We don't accept that as a regular vaccine. You have to get this one. And you're like, what the fuck? I thought it's supposed to prevent a virus. Who the fuck cares about who makes it, right? Yeah. And then if you came from one country, again, that didn't have a good, it would be considered an amber country and you'd have to quarantine. But if you came from a country that has good standing trade, that was a green country and you wouldn't have to quarantine. I was like, are we dealing with a virus or are we dealing with trade embargoes with countries here? Because this is fucking ridiculous. So we would cheat it, where we'd be like, okay, this country's got a trade embargo. So we would land in this one, stay a day, then go to that one, and then drive back to this country and go to that country, so that they're like, oh, you just came from France, which we have a trade deal with, so you don't have to quarantine, even though you're just in Spain, which is an amber country, which we don't accept. It was fucking hokey. That's when you're just like, man, this is, but we'd have to play the game because we needed to shoot. Like, yeah, our team always delivers. So we'd have to go through all the different rules and see what, and then some places would be fine to get a rapid antigen test. That was fine. Other places you had to get a PCR test. Other places they stuck that thing so far up your nose, they fucking tickled your brain for 10 minutes. Right. I was like, and I remember thinking, oh no, seriously, when we were in Switzerland, we had it, they had to go, I think it was like 15 or 20 seconds up there like this.
Jesus.
Over. My eyes are watering. I'm snotting everywhere. I'm like, man, every other country just goes and you're good. Right? You've got it up in my brain like 20 minutes. Like, I thought this thing was so contagious. Just if you're next to people, you can get it. Can't you just go like this and take a swab?
Yeah, we need to get a piece of your frontal lobe to get an actual test. Yeah.
And we spent every project is over budget. And when I'm going through the CMF and everything now, because we get our funding program, so they're like, oh, why are you guys so over budget? I'm like, we shot during a fucking world pandemic where everything was like, it was at times. We travel on a Sunday. This is another big fucking hoodwink. And certain places, cities we'd be in would have one place open on a Sunday, right? And they would charge 250 euros per person to be able to get your test so you could get on your flight. Just a fucking scam, right? Whereas if you're traveling on Friday, there's all these other places and you can get it done for $50, but we're the only business going on a Sunday, so you're going to have to pay.
You know, and that's probably why it took 5 years to make the Phil Heath and Dolph Lundgren documentary, which are still in transit, right? Like, I mean, how many years did that add to the Breaking Olympia documentary? The pandemic add to it?
Just the Olympia getting pushed back for a year and a half, right? And then the release, then Universal bought it, but then they had such a big, conglomerate of projects that they were like, oh, we got to wait a year to like release it, right? Like, we can't put it out right now because they had such a backlog of everything.
And the writer's strike probably got in the way too.
That did, yeah, because that actually happened with because we partnered with The Rock's company on our film.
Yeah.
So The Rock was going to promote, but then he's like, man, I can't promote anything right now while the writer's strike's going on. Doesn't look good, even though this is an international doc. We had to wait for all that stuff. So there's a lot like, that you have to go through.
So you used Rock in the doc, this most recent one, the Olympia.
Yeah.
And I'm interested what that was like. Like, did you go to his house and hang out with him? And
we didn't get to do that, unfortunately, because this was like when that interview happened was like peak COVID. So his company's like, Adam, we can't have you guys. We're like, look, we're all COVID certified. We'll fly out to Hawaii. My team was ready to be like, you don't even have to pay us, Adam, just a couple days in Hawaii. We'll go out there. We'll and I was like, hey, deal. But his team, like, they're just like, look, with everything going on with COVID and the optics of it all, like, we can't have you guys come from Canada. We'll get our local film guy. Just direct us on how you want to film it and have it look and everything, and give us the questions, and we'll get it done for you. So unfortunately, we didn't get to, interview him and hang out with him. I was really looking forward to it, because working with this company has been very cool. Like, for a big independent company, they're super helpful and been down to earth and wicked and very responsive. And it's actually kind of frustrating when I deal with government funds or something like that. And they're like, oh, we're so busy, we can't get back to you. And I'm like, really? Because the Rock's company gets back to me within 48 hours all the time. You're too fucking busy to get back to me. Like, come on.
Okay, so traveling around Europe, trying to get in touch with Dolph Lundgren, and Dolph Lundgren being what Dolph Lundgren is at the time, when you're, mid-COVID, it adds months, years to projects. Wasn't he sick as well? Because there were rumors a couple years ago that he was really, really unwell as well.
Yeah, so Dolph was really sick. We're in Sweden, which, to just kind of follow up on the COVID thing, was funny because the rest of the world is shut down. My wife's calling me crying because they shut down schools again. She's like, I don't know how I'm going to manage with the kids and blah, blah, blah. And Sweden never shut down. Right. So we're in Sweden and she's like crying and upset. And then she's like, well, what are you guys doing? And I'm like, we're about to go to a karaoke bar and have dinner. And she's like, what? How can you go and do that? Like, isn't everything closed? And I'm like, not here. It's wide open. So even we all show up with all our M95s.
Yeah. They chose natural immunity in Sweden. Hey, Locke, did you know that? They're like, hey, you know what? We're going to roll the dice. We're going to roll the dice. And everybody's
I think
like,
it also has to do with the population is wildly healthier than that of the population of North America. Right.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because we asked them, because we all walk out again. Our whole team's got our M95s because we're traveling through different countries to get there, and everybody's looking at us like, whoa, these guys are serious, right? And then we're like, hey, like, do you have to wear a mask here? And they're like, no, it's only ever been a recommendation, never a mandate or anything. We're like, oh, so instantly some of my crew still kept it on, just habit from what you were used to, right? I fucking pull that shit off immediately. And I'm like, hey, if I don't have to require it, I'm not breaking any rules or mandates, off. Yeah. And then we go out and you see in the world was like, we were talking to people. I'm like, so like, what's going on? Is people dying or what? And like, everybody there's like, well, yeah, like unhealthy people, but we actually opened all these field hospitals expecting this big bump, and they had to shut them all down.
This might be a good thing.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they had to close
because the stories that we got out of Sweden too are wild. It's funny because we want to talk Phil Heath, Dolph Lundgren. We keep kind of going back into the COVID bowl, but only because you're still angry and full of resentment about the whole thing, Scorgie, which is great. I love how, like, doesn't matter what we book you to talk about, we always come back.
You find a way of bringing up
we're all still
your dissatisfaction with the Canadian government.
Well, just it's interesting because we were traveling. It was so interesting. And again, going kind of like the analytics and the way the internet worked, because you're still getting everything back in Alberta, right? But then you're also seeing Swedish news, and it was like so weird because you're getting all these feeds through social media, and that's when Kenny was getting lambasted here in Canada because he was keeping things partially open, right? And he was like the only premier doing that, and he was getting roasted.
He wanted to keep the bars open.
Yeah, well, Sweden did. Everything. So that was. So you know what's really
just the gay bars, to be fair.
Just don't close the bars.
So you know what's interesting, because I got like because jet lag, right? Couldn't sleep the first night, so I started really looking, and you look at like the landmass of Sweden, very comparable to Alberta. And then you started looking at the time, Alberta was 85% vaccinated and Sweden was only 60%, right? And Alberta was getting something like 10,000 new COVID cases a day, and Sweden was getting like 300, right? And yet Sweden was only 65% vaccinated. They were 80. Sweden was wide open, and Alberta just shut down again because it was getting too high of cases. And that's when all of us are kind of looking at the news, and like sky is falling on our phone in Alberta.
Yeah.
But in Sweden, we're going out to the karaoke bar, and they were like, we just shut down the field hospitals because nobody was using them. We were expecting big.
Well, dude, there was like Florida did that. And a buddy of mine lives in Florida, works in Florida, lives in Toronto, works in Toronto, but he was back and forth during the pandemic. And he's like, you know what, Dino, it's such a mind F when you go to Florida. From this is like in 2022, right, where we're all going, oh, just hang on another 6 years, we should be fine. But he's like, it's such a mind f because you go down to Florida and it's like we're inundated with news about this coming from everybody that's got a vested interest in what this is. But you go down there and it's like, you want to go to TGI Fridays or do you want to go to like Fuddruckers for a bite to eat? Do you want to go to a concert tonight? UFC's playing. And he's like, nobody talked about it. He said, you saw a bunch of people that, it was their personal thing, but nobody was mocked for it either. It was like, hey, we're just not doing that. And why we're not doing that is because we've decided we're not doing that. And it's funny because during the whole thing, you saw how different countries, provinces, different people were dealing with this whole thing. And for someone like you, as you're explaining it to me, it's giving me all kinds of layers and contexts to, and this is going to be a shocker, to that group of people out there that were like, we're not complying. Yeah. I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe I do agree with parts of what.
Yeah, it was weird to see, and of course, we're in foreign countries, so we're trying to follow by all the policies to make sure we can form, because that's what you're
still a businessman, and I know you, Adam. I know you were vaccinated, and you and your family tried to do the right things. It just, I think that some people are wired to ask questions, right? And some people are wired to be skeptical, and that's not a bad thing when you take a look at something like we went through, in 2020, 2021.
Well, the government overreach is definitely the part that gets me the most, chap. But we're in Sweden filming with Dolph, and we think we'll get back there. Everything's going good, and then Dolph texts me at 6 at night. We'd done filming. We'd started really early in the morning. And then he's like, hey, it's very important you and Andy, the director, come back and tonight, can you guys come back at 7:30? It's very important. We need to talk. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And all of a sudden I'm texting the whole crew, our DOP. I'm like, man, did you guys say something? Did you guys piss him off? Did you feel at any time he was upset? And everybody's like, no, we thought we had such a good day and good bond.
Did you guys steal anything from his house?
No, that's like, a couple of memorabilia, but he wouldn't notice. Right?
Yellow short.
Yeah. Did you steal the Ivan Drago robe from his office?
So I got a good story about that too. So none of that. Right. But then we go and we're like, no, it's all good. But you never know what the town, like that's the challenge with docs, man, is you're dealing with, people's legacy pieces and their stories. So it's sensitive and you've got to build that rapport and be able to get to where they're comfortable talking to you about everything. So we go back, and then Dolph is a cool cat. He reminds me of like a Canadian coming from Sweden, small country, like very humble, although he's accomplished such great heights. And he's like, oh, hey guys, like they're cooking us dinner, and they're like, here's have a beer and let's have some wine. And finally his fiance Emma's like, Dolph, tell him, like, let's stop beating around the bush. And then I'm like, okay, here we go. What did we fuck up? What do we have to take on the chin and overcome? And he goes, okay, guys, you might want to book the rest of I know it's tough to travel and everything right now, but you might want to book my next few interviews right away, because I've been battling cancer for a while. I haven't come public with it, but it appears the medication I'm using is not working, and all the tumors and stuff are growing. So I know they've given me a very short time frame to live. And he's like, and I also don't know what I'm going to look like through treatment. So I want you to book the next few interviews, because I don't know if all my hair is going to fall out or what I'm going to look like. At this point, we're almost in tears. We're like, what? No, he's like, so hopefully I can push through to the premiere of the documentary, but I don't know. The outlook's not good. Mm-hmm. And thankfully, spoiler alert for the doc, he got a third opinion, and they found an anomaly with his cancer that is actually the anomaly is similar to a kidney cancer, that they have a very commercial drug that he can get just about anywhere and take, and it drastically shrunk all of his tumors. Thankfully that he went and got that third opinion.
Wow.
We'll get that done. So yeah, now he's looking good. He's healthy. He looks great for his age. He's working out every day.
He's 66 now? 66?
Yeah.
Is that it? He's about 66 years old. Yeah. And he's been battling this kind of cancer. He's real quiet for 8 years. He didn't say anything until last year to you guys, right?
Yeah. Well, that's because it got really bad. They were all in his lungs. They were everywhere. He wasn't sure.
Where are you at with the Dolph?
Hang on, just real quick. And I want to find that out too. But real quick, a further testament to the conversation we were just having about medical opinions and getting other medical opinions, right? Like getting all the information, advocating for yourself. Well, good for him, because not many people would. They'd have to second opinion and be like, yeah, that's it.
you nailed it, Dean. And he had to go through a ton of tests too, because it isn't easy to go. So actually, Dr. Drakaki, who we interviewed, his oncologist, he went to go get a third opinion because his business manager was on the golf course with a whole bunch of cancer doctors. And they were like, you know, he was already at Cedars or whatever in LA or UCLA, one of the two. I can't remember which one. I have to look at, but and when he first brought it to the new doctor, Dr. Drakaki, she was kind of like, man, these are colleagues. I know these people. These are highly like, I don't think I'm going to be able to find anything. Like, I'll do it. And the reason she did it, she's actually from, I can't remember where, either she's somewhere Middle East, I think. And she was like, the reason she decided to do it was because actually her and her dad had watched Rocky IV when they were younger and shared this great moment. So she's like, oh, I will, because it's a lot of tests and stuff that he had to go. It isn't just a simple go take a blood test and figure it out. Like he had to do MRIs and scans and all this stuff to try to figure out if they could find anything. And she said, are you prepared for the amount of work that takes? Because it's work to try to figure it out. And she wasn't going to do it, but she had that memory with her dad. And she's like, oh, this would be okay. I'm going to do it for him. And then Dolph's such a cool guy. And then she was so, you can even see it in the film. She's we found this anomaly and it's going to extend his life. And it worked out really good. But like you say, Dean, like thankfully Dolph was willing to push for a third, because he'd already got it from like, is either UCLA or Cedars, one of the top in California. And, you know, kind of like given the diagnosis, there's nothing we can do.
So what did you steal from his house?
Yeah. What did he call you back to give back?
I didn't steal anything, but I have a little thing. This is kind of, you guys are more my age group and would get it. So when we're in Marbella, Spain, filming with him, he sold this big palace that he had out there. I saw right away when we walk in the house, I see the power sword. Now, for those listeners that don't know what the power sword is, that is He-Man's sword in Masters of the Universe. Right? I see it sitting there right away. I point.
How do you not?
How do you get that on the plane?
Like, legit, dude. How do you, as a He-Man Masters of the Universe, Dolph Lundgren, Rocky guy, Rocky IV, how do you not freeze or have a seizure? Because if I see the sword, I'm like this. Can I touch it?
So, Dean, I got very unprofessional, right?
Yeah,
because Dolph's such a cool cat. So I see the sword and I go to our cinematographer right away. I'm like, dude, and I point, and he's like, he's a younger guy, so he's like, yeah, it's a sword. It's cool, whatever. And I was like, no, dude, it's a sword? Are you a fucking idiot? I was like, dude, that's the power sword. And he's like, what's the power sword? And I was like, dude, I don't even want to talk to you. I don't even know if you should be the cinematographer for this.
Yeah, film. You're fired.
I was like, dude, it is He-Man's sword, the Masters of the Universe sword. And people actually really liked that design in the film, right? Actually, because it wasn't.
Gary, get over here. Sound guy, get over here. Do you know what this sword is?
So
you're fired.
So I actually said, Dolph, I know it's unprofessional, but like, can I take a photo with the sword? And he's like, yeah, of course. So like, I got a picture of me and the thing like this. It's on my Instagram.
Come on.
Power sword. Yeah, I got that.
Is it really? You got a picture of the power sword from He-Man Masters of the Universe? Dolph Lundgren?
Is that your nerdiest moment?
Yeah, all the things, cool things you've done in your life.
That is one of the, because that's super, super unprofessional. Like, you shouldn't ask the talent for a photo with a prop from a movie that you're it's not professional at all.
Okay. Quick question. Did you see any Rocky IV memorabilia in his house when you were there? Did you see the Ivan Drago stuff?
Oh, of course. That's
okay.
He makes fun of it all the time. Like, even there's like on his Instagram, he'd be like, I'm back at the gym today, and he looks in the mirror and he's like, I must break you, right? Like, he has to do that whole like talking to himself. Like, he is so cool. Like, he plays it up. He doesn't try to be too serious. He's very thankful for everything he's accomplished. So I don't know if you guys can see it there, but that's me at the power sword.
Oh my God! Oh, you're sick.
Yeah.
Such a nerd. You're such a nerd, Scorgie.
That gives me the chills when I see it, because I was a massive He-Man fan when I was a kid. Because when I was a kid, you're about the same vintage as me. Are you almost 50? Around 50?
44.
Yeah.
Okay,
relax. Relax.
Close to
Lachlan's
58.
Yeah. But you're almost the same vintage as me. And you grew up in the same time as me, where we had 3 channels, right? Aggrevision is what we called it. And you would get very few Saturday morning television. It was a rush to get downstairs to watch Saturday morning cartoons and shit, because you got like 5 channels. And one of them was He-Man Masters of the Universe. Like, you would get that, and they would have it on replay. And you would, and Hercules and those, but He-Man Masters of the Universe. So when that came out, I was like, oh my God, this is real. It's not just a cartoon.
I know that's it. I was the same thing. Like, and to me, when you saw Dolph in that first scene, we have it in the doc, right? When he's standing on the rocks and he jumps down and fights those, like, and you see here, I was like, yes, that is exactly what I pictured He-Man to look like this big, strong, powerful man. I was like, that is him.
That's him.
That's the perfect guy.
Okay, quick question. This is a bit of a sluicer, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I don't consider Rocky V a movie. I don't consider that a movie. Out of the 4 Rocky movies, which is the best one, and you can only pick between Rocky 4 and Rocky 2, because Rocky 1 was a seminal movie. But if you're talking emotion, if you're talking xenophobia, if you're talking legitimate, like, move you in a Rocky movie, Rocky 2 or Rocky 4, which is it?
Oh, it's Rocky 4. I'd even put Rocky 4 over Rocky 1.
What?
Yeah.
You're the only person I've ever heard say that.
Yeah. Well,
you're a movie producer,
right?
It's disappointing. No, Rocky 2 is the best of all the Rockies. You can't argue.
Where he fights Apollo Creed and he wins?
Yeah, where he wins. And his wife almost dies giving birth to this kid who just becomes an ungrateful little shit when he gets older, by the way. Right? He's like, hey, your mom almost died. You're like, you could show a little respect to your father, who's clearly lost it all. But my point is that you watch
I loved 4, but I'm kind of with Dean on 2 if I can't pick one.
Adrian
One's
almost
better.
Dies.
One's the best.
Paulie, he's got a shot at redemption. Apollo wants another shot at the chump. He's like, you get a shot at the chump. And he's out. He's like, I love my wife. She hurt herself moving some bird feed. I'm not moving from her hospital bed.
I'll give you my argument. Those are Rocky 2 is great too, but I was a little young when those ones came out. So for me, what makes a great hero is an excellent villain.
Yes.
And Apollo Creed isn't really a villain, right?
That's true, because you kind of like him.
Is the ultimate, and we go into this in depth in the doc, because originally the way that Stallone had seen Drago was like a Russian bear, a big beard, hairy, like this crazy looking like Russian, until he met Dolph and was like, wait a minute. He's like, maybe Dolph is like the look of the future. He's like, I want him because everybody's going to hate him because he looks so good. And he had to fight with the other producers. They're like, he's too tall. And Stallone's like, that's the point. They're like, he's too good looking. He's like, that's the point. They're like, he's too young. He's like, that's the point. It's a fable. It's David and Goliath. Rocky is past his prime. Drago is the hero from Russia. He doesn't even see himself as a villain, right? He's coming there to better his career. He's like, the line is like, I did not come here to lose, right? Like he comes here to win, right? Yeah. And then, but he fights the ultimate like American hero, the underdog who has to train in the snow and beat him. So
I love that we all have a bad Russian accent, every single one of us.
But here's the other thing,
based on Rocky 4,
all of it.
Look, they're all great movies, but the one I would say is, can you say? I guess you can, because you can say Adrian, but I'd say you could say I must break you, and almost everyone knows what that is.
Rocky 4,
9 out of 10.
Rocky 4. Yeah,
which
but
is the one. Which is the one with the street fighting? Was that 3?
Oh, that's 5 with like Tommy Morrison.
It
sucked.
Yeah.
It was terrible. But okay, that line from Rocky 4, give it to you, the most famous line of any Rocky movie of all time.
Yeah.
The second most famous line, Adrian's in bed. She wakes up. They're having this nice moment. She goes, I want you to do something. I get chills just talking about it, Scorgie. I want you to do something for me. Come here. He's like, what's that? What's that? Win. Ding.
Yeah.
Ding. And then there's Mick. He's like, what are we waiting for? And I'm like, I cry every time. It doesn't matter where I am. Between that and
I found it weird that Mick was in the bedroom. It was like, why is he there for that intimate moment?
I don't know why he's there. He's just there. So
when is the Dolph doc going to be ready? And when are you going to be pushing that out?
Let's get to that in Heath.
So we are hoping Dolph we're hoping to lock picture here by the end of the week. It's actually very close.
Wow.
We've been back and forth with Dolph on the editing sessions. Very detailed, because he's a very, he got a Fulbright scholarship to MIT for chemical engineering. He's getting into directing now. So he's very, very cerebral, very particular. And
is he too hands-on? Scorgie?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'd say because he put it in a perfect way. He said, listen, guys, he's like, to be honest, he's like, got to remember, this isn't like a movie I'm just in. He's like, this is personal stories, because he doesn't hold back about anything. He talks about being unfaithful and why his marriage fell apart. He talks about using steroids when he was like in.
Wow.
He talks about the demons he had, being abused by his father, and that's why he ended up like, having drinking issues and relationship issues. Like, it was nothing was off the table. Like, better than if you're comparing to some of the other big name docs, we won't mention them, where there was much more. Dolph went in the hard areas, right? So he's like, look, I'm just sensitive to make sure that we cover those correctly, and then I'm honoring people in the story, and we're not using specific names. And so, and at first, we go back and forth because our editor, Pollyanna, has done an amazing job and killed it. And it's hard to get notes when you think you're done, and then they want to tweak a little bit more. But honestly, we go back and look, and a lot of them, you're kind of like, man, actually, those notes make it better. Like, it's always tough when you get notes on creative, because you're kind of like, ugh. But I will say a lot of the stuff he suggested, when we go back and look, we're actually like, oh, that's actually a good note. That's solid.
Okay.
Right,
so he's a partner.
You'll be out before the end of the year?
Pardon? Yeah. So we're hoping to premiere at Toronto International Film Festival at TIFF. We're hoping this is the one that finally gets me in there. I can land studio deals, but I can't get into prestigious festivals. That is kind of like
in Canada.
Yeah.
I know the people that organize it. Do you want me to slide your name in there? Do you want me to send it to them? Yeah. Okay.
Put it in there. I'm sure. I know I rattled their feathers a few years ago when Ice Guardians was very close to getting in. I was one of the last cuts. We'd actually booked a theater and everything, expecting not to get in. And then everybody's getting these rejection or acceptance letters, and we're not getting anything. We're kind of like, hey guys, like, are you moving on? And they're like, give us a little bit. You're down to the last few films. So we did an off TIFF, like our off Broadway premiere of Ice Guardians. And it was right during the year when they brought back the World Cup of Hockey. So we had all these players. We had Brendan Shanahan show up, Wendell Clark, all these tough guys, Kelly Chase. Like, we had like the Hall of Fame of tough guys there, sold out 500 seats. It was on a prime night. We got prime media because hockey in Toronto, it like supersedes or is equal with even big movies and big celebrities. So we got all the prime morning spots. And of course, I didn't correct great media personalities such as yourself, Dean. They would say, oh, Ice Guardians premiering at the Toronto Film Festival. And I'd be like, no, we're premiering during, but sure, you want to say at, no problem. So we had
I remember when that doc came out with Jeff Merrick, who I was working with at the time. You might see him on 31 Thoughts, Sportsnet, Hockey Night in Canada. Great guy, good friend of mine still, good dude. And I remember when Ice Guardians came out, he flipped me a copy of it. He goes, you got to watch this. This is so incredible. And he loved it. And so it premiered during the film festival. And I remember him telling me, it's not really a film festival thing, but it's one of the greatest hijackings of a film festival you'll ever see in your life.
So it goes one step further. So then after that, there's called the TIFF Film Circuit, where they book it at all the other kind of tier 2 and tier 3 festivals all over Canada. They'd gotten so many requests to book it because of all the media and the hype and the photos and everybody talking and all the NHL players tweeting and talking about it. And the TIFF program was like, I don't see this film. Like, when did it premiere? I don't see it in a program. And finally, the two programmers that I had a private screening with that I was very close with at the festival, I think one of them's no longer there. They were like, fine, just add it to the TIFF Film Circuit. And it actually did quite well. I think he did $5,000 or $6,000 doing the TIFF Film Circuit, and they added it, but they didn't love that I booked it. But there's no rules to say, like, I didn't get into the festival. So I booked the theater during the dates of the festival, and we sold it out. We made it a spectacular event, and it worked. But I don't think they love that. So I think
it seems like a very profitable loophole.
Not a bad deal.
Hey, it's so hard to correct professional media people right on air when they're like, hey, it's premiering at the festival. I was like, on Tuesday.
Now, the next one that you're pushing right now is actually the Phil Heath story, but that's actually going to be in Edmonton sooner than later.
Yeah, we're doing April. It's gonna be April 6th here in Edmonton, and Phil will be coming into town. I actually just booked all his travel and everything this week, so tickets are available. It will sell out quick. We're going out to the press release officially goes out tomorrow, so we don't expect it to last very long. But it's pretty cool. The Oilers are going to do a pretty cool thing with him, hosting him and having him on sports and having to meet the champs and stuff like that, like champs meeting champs. So it's going to be fun. This is the fun part. We've worked on this thing for a long time, having to overcome like global challenges and then the struggles of reshifting the tournament. So I'm really excited to be able to enjoy with Phil, and Phil's in a much better place where he can enjoy these kind of events now, because when we were filming with him, this is the thing about bodybuilding. Whatever you think about the sport, it is one of the most dedicated, because you can't even have a beer in the 6 months leading up to your training. Like Phil put it this way, he's like, you know, if you're playing hockey or basketball, right, and you have a great game, you can go with the boys, have a couple beers, you know, indulge in a dessert and stuff like that. He's like, I can't. He's like, for a decade, when his wife's birthday was always right before a big tournament, he's like, I could never do anything with her. I couldn't have a glass of champagne. I couldn't, because all of that stuff could be the difference of you winning or losing your next title. And he went,
yeah, it's an insane sport.
Insane. Your diet is regimented. So filming around that.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. Did you film? Did you like get all the details of what a guy like that eats during the day?
That is the number one thing that all of them talk about when they want to retire. Is they're like, I can't wait to just not have to be on a scheduled thing to eat every 2 hours. Like, they get so sick of food because they're trying to put on all this mass and keep it fueled and get big and train like crazy. Like, it was so hard to film and work around the schedule. Like, and of course, anytime you're filming somebody trying to accomplish a great event in sports, like, as much as Phil liked us and we were friends, like, they get annoyed of you. They're like, man, I'm trying to go break the record. You want to stick a camera in my face every 2 seconds. I was like, well, that was what you signed up for. Right. But they get frustrated with you, and you have those moments where they're, you know, they're trying to become the greatest of all time. So they get frustrated with you at times. And that's when, you know, everybody wants to know what exactly a producer does. That's when no one else wants to put on the producer hat in those moments, when the talent's pissed off and they're having a bad day and they have to tell you, you know, they're like, get the fuck out of my face. The only person that puts their hand up is the real producer that has to be like, I'll go deal with this, right? And then it's like, you let them have it. And normally, you know, again, they're trying to accomplish great things. So they're not bad people. They're not getting in, and they're just stressed. They're trying to accomplish.
That's cool that you got him for the premiere here in Edmonton.
Yeah.
Scorgie. That's awesome.
He's
for you.
Super excited to do that kind of stuff. Like, again, that's the cool part about docs, is you go on such a long journey with them, as you become part of their story, right? So it isn't just like,
well, you're part of their team, right? You're telling their story, so you want to be part of their team. Like, it's a big trust thing. And if anybody knows anything about, you know, telling someone's story from a reputational perspective, or at least curating specifically guys like that, Dolph Lundgren, Michael Bisping, Phil Heath, guys who have done really incredible things, like things that not many people have, and guys that have lived a life that not many people have, whether it's extracurricular or the dedication of what it is that they do and the story that you're telling. I mean, these are people that are so dedicated. We cannot even begin to understand what they go through to be these incredible individuals, right? And so being able to tell those stories, they take that shit very, very, very seriously.
Oh, incredibly. And it's their legacy, right? So they're so picky about everything being on there. And, you know, we always tell them, though, is like, you got to show the warts and all, right? You got to go in and give us everything too, right? So and that's it's kind of good. That's where you get people at the tail end of their career is always best, because then that's when they're relieved to share it and kind of like, you know, here I'm now on the end of my career as far as bodybuilding, or in Dolph's career, like, you know, he's in a place where he's super comfortable and going to therapy, so he doesn't mind talking about everything. That always makes him most powerful, because I think that's where docs, in this crazy change of the entertainment industry, are still so powerful, and why people are gravitating to them is because they're real. Right? There's so much fake with legacy media and scripted movies where they're pushing agendas and pushing political, you know, ideologies, where you're just like, oh, this is just an inspiring story of an individual who went through a lot. I just want to watch it.
And it's authentic too, right? Like, the thing that Lachlan and I talk about when it comes to online content, or content in general, you know, the secret sauce isn't in presenting this Facebook version of you, right? It's not in this idea that you've mastered the art of mastery in every capacity, and that's what you're going to show people. The connective tissue, and this is why I love your documentaries. You show those things with a lot of people. I don't know if it's a thing where you're like, I'm not working with a guy unless you're going to tell me the truth about what you're going through. But that's what I'm looking forward to about this documentary, because the vulnerability that people share when they tell their stories about their journeys, whether it's been drugs, alcohol, booze, women, gambling, living life, especially in an arena that not many people have and that a lot of people think is a great time, that vulnerability of, I failed at my life too, here's the connective tissue that you can identify with in your own life, is truly spectacular. It's kind of what sets your docs apart, in my opinion.
Thank you, Dean. That's exactly it. That's, you know, it's having that human connectivity and that relatableness for everyone, and that vulnerability connects everyone. you know, they're just in a heightened, like you said, they're in these crazy lives that we would never live or don't have an opportunity to live, whether that's because of dedication or whatever. But if you don't have that, and I have that talk with all of them when we start. I'm like, man, you've got to, if you don't do that, people read through the fakeness right away. Like, but people will love you more. And that's where, you know, and it's always tough because Phil, like all of them, like Dolph does too, they break down and they have these emotional moments. And at first they're like, oh, I'm supposed to be this like macho. I don't know if I should show that much vulnerability. You know, like, no, man, trust me. Instantly gets people hooked and connected to you. That's what they want to see. They want to see somebody vulnerable and open and even emotional.
Real. They want that. People want real.
Yeah.
For the love of God. Why do, no, I don't want to take us down a path. Sorry.
He's triggered. He's triggered, but you can apply that to everything. Politics is where you see it the most. Yeah, and I'll tell you something. I'm shocked that Phil Heath ever has a problem not putting all of himself on Main Street in a conversation
what he wears.
When he's willing to wear this to competition.
And it's funny, they all talk about that too when they first start, and they're like, what,
a little marble bag that you gotta wear when you're
wear this skimpy Speedos? What the fuck? No, like, but it was interesting because we were saying at the time,
Phil more comfortable in board shorts.
Yeah, well, Phil wasn't sure if he was going to go back and compete. Right. Like that was another thing. Then we started and COVID hit and he had the injuries. Like, I don't know if I'm going to go back and compete. So then that like kind of changed the story we were telling. We're like, okay, well, shit. Then all of a sudden he got back. And like you see in the trailer, he's like, if I'm going to come back, what would that look like? Right. And then the whole industry was excited because Florida was one of the only things open. And this was a big event. And they moved it from Vegas to Florida for the first time. And Phil was coming out of retirement and Big Ronnie was there. And it is kind of cool to see these, like, just, they look like mythical beings when you see them on stage, right?
They don't look real.
And when you see each one come up individually, you're like, oh my God, that guy's going to win. He looks incredible. Oh my God, that guy looks even better. Oh my God. And then like you start to notice, like, I'm like, how do you notice the difference? They all look ridiculously incredible.
Yeah, like, you see all these weightlifters, you're like, how does that guy win over that guy? Because they both look incredibly ripped and like they
belly
have
button
genitals.
It's the belly button.
Oh, then but then you start to see as they continue, then they pose down and they bring other ones to compete against other, and you start to see, like, our naked eye could even see, you're like, oh man, his back double bicep, like he looks more prominent and he looks more defined. And then as they make him go through it over and over again, you start to see who fades, right? Whose conditioning starts to fade and who their definitions goes. Like, it was fascinating. Like, that's also a great part about docs is you go through this whole journey and you learn about industries and stuff like that you wouldn't have learned. Like
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's got to be a big part of it, Adam. I know how curious of a person you are just because we've gotten to know each other over the last, 5-10 years, whatever we've been doing this. But yeah, I can see that being very appealing to you, that you get to dig into another topic and figure something else out, right?
Yeah, and learn about it from people who are the best at it in the world, right?
Well,
like,
that's
that must be very cool.
That's why I continue to do it, gentlemen, because it sure as hell isn't for the big paycheck, because docs are not making these super independently wealthy, right? It's for the adventure. It's for the movement, like in getting inspired by working with these people that have incredible stories and learning, seeing different aspects of life you'd never see in your regular life. And yeah, I make a good living to be able to support my family and stuff, but that's what keeps us coming back is the adventure all the time. And we have a really cool team that we travel with. It's kind of like a hockey team or a band now. It's a crew.
Yeah.
It's cool. And Airbnbs have changed that a little bit where traveling isn't so bad now. You don't feel so homesick because you're with like your second family, almost your production family.
So breaking Olympia, the Phil Heath story, there is a trailer that you can go track down. If you punch that into your old Google machine, it'll come up on
the
YouTube.
Description of this podcast as well.
Oh, you're going to put that in there? Perfect.
Yeah, as well as the bit.ly link to go and buy tickets to the April 6th premiere in Edmonton too. So
can I ask one question about the tickets? Does the ticket include the Q&A with Phil? Is that all part of it?
100%. And then we're going to have the red carpet, and then you can come and take photos and all that jazz and get a pose with the champ and all that. Yeah. So we're going to have I always try to make it an experience, right? To make it, if you're coming out to see me and going to spend, good money, I want it to make an experience for you. So the movie is going to be great as well, but getting that experience and hearing it from the champ and the team right afterwards is always the special part of it.
It's awesome.
Have like an interactive thing where he gets to slap somebody as hard as he wants for an extra amount of dollars.
No, we're not doing the fight stock yet. That's not up just yet, but we'll get there.
Adam Scorgie Productions. Go and check out his new website, the documentaries that are coming out shortly, Dolph Lundgren's documentary. And we're going to keep an eye on where can people go for information on when these documentaries are coming out and where they can find them. Just to your website?
Yeah, so to my website, but Breaking Olympia is going to premiere in Edmonton April 6th. It'll premiere in Kelowna May 10th, but it's going to be available Canada-wide on Super Channel April 6th, exclusively on Super Channel, which you can get through Amazon, though. So if you go through Amazon, you'll see it there. And then in the States and internationally, it'll be available March 26th. You'll be able to get it in all your transactional platforms. Google will be released with Universal Pictures. And then Dolph, hopefully in the fall, along with Jordan Tutu and Biff Naked. Those are all hopefully coming out in the fall as well.
I saw that you had a Biff Naked documentary, and I am this closet Biff Naked fan.
Well, you're a
huge fan.
She is so awesome.
She's a rock star.
You want to talk about one of the nicest people I've ever met? I cannot believe with the life she's been through that she is such a sweetheart.
Isn't it incredible? Yeah, her life story is bananas.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's bananas. And what she's gone through, and then when she got sick at the peak of her career, and now she continues to fight for other people. Like, it's just truly, and I've had a thing for her for like 25 years.
Well, on that topic, I had an awkward moment with her because I'm married and she was flirting with me big time, like every time that I interviewed her.
That's an absolute load of shit.
Yeah, and I had to be firm with her, right? Like, listen, Biff, I'm married and I know I'm a hunk, but and it'd be easy to fall for me. But
yeah, I know that you've got a thing for all this Lachlan Cross, but I can't give it to you. Yeah.
It's hard sometimes. It's hard work.
Scorgie, thanks, buddy. Adam, it's always great to see you. At Scorgie on Twitter is where you can find him. Really appreciate your time as always, and best of luck at the premiere of the Heath documentary on April 6th. Everybody go on to his website and you can check it. Everything to do with the documentary, everything to do with Adam, both documentaries in his website or in the description of this podcast as well. You have a great day in Edmonton, and take Lachlan for lunch. He's free.
You too, boys. Thank you so much for always having me on, promoting my team's work. I really, really genuinely appreciate it.
And thank you for making this a tight 30-minute podcast.
No problem. I close the lips a little bit and try to make it more precise. I got to jump onto a meeting with ESPN, so I had to do that. So
thanks, buddy. Take care. Adam Scorgie, Scorgie Productions. He's a documentarian. He's just a good dude, and he's
great dude. I'm a big fan. Yeah, I'm going to try to make it out to that premiere.
Do it. You know what I loved about the first part of his first part of that interview was how we kept trying to bring it back into the documentary, and we mentioned it at the end of the interview where he's like, hang on, guys. I just got to tell you about how fucking angry I am at the COVID situation around the world, specifically in this country. He's been sitting on that anger for a long
Yeah. Well, and again, you and I have talked about it, right? Everyone has a different experience with this based on what they went through, right? Yeah. And I noticed it when I started to realize that people were really impacted by what was going on. And I'm not talking about the convoy or anything political, but I'm just talking about people were like very anxious. There was people in my family that were not handling the lockdown well. Like I don't need to get into specifics, but I remember saying to the guys on the locker room when we were doing the show, I was like, you guys need to remind me not to be too excited about the fact that we're locked down and I don't have to deal with people at work anymore. Because there's a lot of people that are really not handling this well, and they're in a situation where this is stressing the hell out of them. And I wasn't impacted like that because of how I'm wired. Like you and I have talked about that. I'm a bit of an introvert, right?
Yeah. So when COVID started and they said you got to stay in your house or you can't go out to these places, I was like, oh, well, that's a shame.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. But it did have an impact on people that get up every morning with the intent of having a social interaction in their lives, right? And they need that. That gives them fuel.
Well, I was thinking about it, even just listening to Scorgie, and everybody says the same thing. Like what was true yesterday might not be true today, right? Is in our selfishness, and I can say this to be true, in our selfishness, mine specifically during COVID, where I was like, fuck, the world came to me. I work from home all day long. I don't have to go anywhere. Stores are closed. It's like you didn't have to think, right? You didn't have any options. You just got to do your thing. And so we grew the business. Everything was great. but that was my business. It was a stay-at-home business. But then when you talk to a guy like Scorgie and he takes you through the rigmarole or the process of what he had to go through just to support his family.
Well, and not only that, also looking at the difference from traveling from one province to province, state to state, country to country, and how disjointed the whole thing. No one was on the same page. That has to frustrate you. I don't care who you are.
Totally.
If there's a rule for one section of the population and then it's completely ignored by another, that's just not the way of getting everybody on the same page with anything, right? Whether it's a pandemic or whatever, right?
Yeah. But it was interesting because as much as the world wants to try to move past these subjects,
we still get dragged back into them.
We're damaged by it.
Yes.
Like I just watched maybe one of the greatest guys on the planet go, yeah, documentary, but I'm pretty pissed about this stuff.
Still. Right. Still, because of the massive impact it had on his business and the way he conducts himself.
Yeah.
We're going to do a feature on the Dean Blundell show every day. With Dean's blessing, we're going to have a locker room retro replay of the day moment.
And it couldn't come at a better time because we're literally in the middle of a month of repentance for all the dirty, terrible things that we do right now.
Is Lent right now?
Lent is right now.
That was a happy coincidence based on my lack of knowledge about religion. I just grabbed this one because I thought it would be a funny break to play.
Can you please give it some context? This is last year, morning show, the locker room, which is now defunct.
I think it's a couple years ago. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We made a bet during, we bet on a lot of things. We made a bet during Lent to all three of us quit
masturbating.
Yes. Pulling our pud.
Whacking off,
whatever you want to call it.
Yes. Starting the trouser snake.
Yes.
Starting the one-eyed yogurt thrower.
Yes. Gotcha. So all of those things. And the loser had to get an I'm out tattoo. You remember the reference, the Seinfeld reference?
I'm out.
Yeah.
Kramer came in, slapped his money down because he had to give it a pull.
The lock retro replay.
Lent challenge update. Yesterday, I was mad at my pants.
Yeah, if you don't know, we are not flipping our omelets, I guess you could say.
Grant, where are you at?
I have not gone fly fishing.
I'm good. Oh, I went out in a blaze of glory, man. I'm out. I couldn't. I was watching Halle Berry as Catwoman, and
why would you do that to yourself?
And I just about died.
You got to avoid temptation. Why would you do that to yourself?
Because the new Batman, they were talking about, the new Catwoman, and I couldn't help myself.
Zoe.
Yeah.
Oh, Zoe Kravitz is she's one of my biggest crushes right now.
Jimmy's getting a tattoo.
You get the knuckles?
No, I'll get it on the inside of my arm.
I might get it just because I like that tattoo.
Because I'll get it right here, because that's the way it faces when you're.
No.
Jesus, too much.
No, too much.
All right. Well, that took 8 days longer than I thought it would.
Yeah.
There you go.
A little masturbation humor from the locker room.
We don't need to talk about. Do we need to talk about? One more thing before we.
I didn't watch it last night. I'm busy with this show called The Gentleman on Netflix, and I had like 3 hours to myself last night. And I'm like, Oscars or The Gentleman? Oscars or The Gentleman? The Gentleman won and finished the series last night. Saw Emma Stone won for Best Actress. Cillian Murphy won for Best Actor. Both well deserved.
I like him. Oppenheimer walked away with it. They ran away with it.
What, did they win Best Picture? Oppenheimer Best Picture?
Yes, and Best Direct. Yes, Best Director.
Best Supporting Actress. Anybody? No. Best Supporting Actor. No idea.
Sorry.
No idea. I don't know. I'm just not into award shows. It's like, everybody's doing some stuff, and then you watch these people show up in Louis Vuitton.
I had it on, and I was sort of gradually the one moment I really liked, and people should go and try to find this. Jimmy Kimmel went out on stage and read a review of his performance hosting the Oscars.
Mm-hmm.
And it was from Truth Social, and it was from Donald Trump. and it was very funny.
Without question, one of the funniest things I have ever seen in my life. He wrote, like, literally read a live truth social tweet that he got from
Brilliant.
And someone said it to him on the phone.
Brilliant.
Didn't he close the Oscars with it? Because I saw the clip.
It was towards the end, and then they brought out
Like, I got
Al
a couple
Pacino,
minutes.
and I'm surprised they didn't haul him out with like two people on one side of him, like on either side of him. He looked drunk.
Yeah, he apparently was. Apparently, he was just wasted.
Was he? Okay, because I said to my wife, we were both watching it, and I'm like, something's off. Like, that looks like me, like when I got 6 in me or 7 in me or 8 in me, and I'm trying to make it look like I'm not that drunk. That's what that felt like to me, right? I wonder if Al remembers being on stage last night. Anyway, we don't need to get into that.
I don't think he does. I got a picture of it here. There's a couple pictures. Like, apparently he was bombed walking in. People were saying, yeah, Al's, and this is apparently the rumor about Al. Great guy. He's just like,
he likes the sauce, I think.
He's done taking care of the things like moderation. He's like, I'm 83. Like, what is there left to moderate? So apparently he just loves to drink all the time. Like, and he's like,
good for him.
Impregnating 30-year-old women here and there. And he's like, I've been taking it pretty easy for long. This is him on the stage last night. He looks like he's someone else put on his pants for him. It literally looks like just this cute old drunk guy. And that's what he is. And someone asked him about it. They're like, you know, what are you doing? Like, why, what are you doing with your life? You're having kids, you're partying all the time now. He's like, why not? And I'm like,
good for him.
Al Pacino. I guess so.
Good for
him.
It's
like when you get fired from a radio gig and you're like, I might as well just start drinking heavily during the day. There's really no point in not. I mean, okay, I've done everything there is to do.
I'm not drinking every day.
All right.
Okay. We do need to, we can talk about this during the next podcast, but I do want to tease it with, I think someone from the Liberal Party of Canada is paying attention to this podcast, and not only paying attention to it, stealing my ideas.
Not only are they stealing your ideas, they stole another one of my ideas a couple weeks ago. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow on the show.
Yeah.
We're also going to talk about sugar daddies on the show.
Yeah.
And where do people like Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce meet? Where do they meet? Because I will tell you where rich, famous people meet for sex and relationships. That is tomorrow. Emily from MuseMassageSpa.com, Muse Massage Spa. She's going to join us, Muse on the mic, to talk about that, talk about the other thing, sexual things, horny things, because she owns a spa. And we're also going to talk about the liberals that are just listening to our show on a daily basis.
They're stealing our ideas.
Yeah.
We should get paid for that.
And you know what, dude? You had politicians weighing in on the comment that you made on the last show. In the comment section underneath the podcast.
I didn't know that.
That's a great idea. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They stole your idea. The Liberal Party of Canada stole your idea.
I didn't know they were in the comments section.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
And a lot of reporters that cover this stuff. They're in on your business, too.
I think so. Yeah. Why wouldn't they?
I don't see why not. You're a genius. We both are. People should be more like us every day. Thanks, buddy. Good to see you.
All right. That was a good one. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, it was fun. Lachlan Cross and Adam Scorgie on today's podcast. You can get everything. I'm trying to get you out there, but
okay, I'm trying to exit. I'm trying to exit. You're such a dick. I'm just going to shut the whole.
Never mind. I got you. I removed you. Thanks to Adam. Thanks to Lachlan for being part of the show. Everybody have a great day. Thanks to our partners for making this possible as well. Don't forget, you can get underwear at edgefineimports.com. Gitch, engineered for any level of performance, as well as everyday life, made for every part of your walk or run or sprint through your day. Barely their fabric. Gitch are the best underwear you'll ever buy. They're boxer briefs, pouch in the front, massive waistband. You can't mess with these things. Bunch of different colors. And right now, you can get a free pair when you use promo code GITCH3 at checkout. You go to Ed's Fine Imports, buy 3 pairs of underwear, use the promo code GITCH3, you get to pick another pair. You get that pair for free. And then you get another 15% off when you give them your email address. Go to edgefineimports.com. Check these underwear out. They are changing the game. Boxer briefs are it with the pouch in the front. There are pretenders, and then there are people that re-engineer the game with their underwear. Ed would be one of those guys. edgefineimports.com. Gets 3 as your promo code. That's where you can find him, another 15% off when you give him your email address. Also, MuseMassageSpa.com. Head there today, 1290 Finch Avenue West. If you're looking for a Muse, want to see your schedule or treatments, and you can check out the spa online. You can also download their podcast, Muse on the Mic, sexologists and educators and advocates in the sex work industry that tell stories and anecdotes and talk about how to advocate for the world's oldest profession. And the podcast is Bananas Uncensored on their Patreon feed as well, Muse on the Mic Patreon. And, of course, you can get them at YouTube. Also, don't forget, brought to you by our friends at CanTorque, makers of rugged, hard-working torque wrenches out of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. All your solutions for torque wrenches under one roof. They fabricate, they calibrate, they repair, and they also offer distribution opportunities. 20 years of unparalleled expertise, reliability you can trust. Colin and his group have been engineering torque wrench solutions, industrial torque wrench solutions for 20 years. They're the best in the world at it. They do business all over the world, and they're proud to do business right here in Canada, manufacture in Canada. Not many people can say that, and they put a maple leaf on all their products. That's why they know that they love this country, and they want to share that love with and expertise with other people. And right here in Canada, you can get the same expertise in your business. Any bolting solution, they have it. Go to cantorque.com's new website today to check out all their products and services. And, of course, we're brought to you by factcheck.io. Do you believe fact check software it's going to kill disinformation? Right now, they're taking beta testers who you want to test their product. And if you want to become a verified fact checker, you can. And this is software that not only checks sentiment and origin, it also checks sources, and it checks countries, geo. It checks everything. Scientists have done some incredible stuff to the internet over the past couple of years, and data scientists that have engineered it for bad. We have taken the same approach, and we've engineered it for answers so that you can make your way through today's disinformation superhighway. It is an absolute disinformation killer. Join their fact check team today. Go to factchek.io. Again, factcheck.io, factchek.io. Sign up for their beta testing program. You'll be happy you did. Wait and see what they do. You'll be able to tell, like, the address that this information comes from. It's going to be crazy. Sign up for it today. Everybody, have a great day. See you tomorrow on this very show. Emily from Muse will join us. We'll deal with sugar daddies. We'll talk a little bit about famous people dating, sex apps, and we're going to get into a few other things. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. No, I meant it. We will see you tomorrow, right around this time. Let's not get crazy. We'll be back. Pretty sure we'll be back. Yeah, we'll be back.